Well, hello. We are going to be talking about section 3.4 today, which is in the Blitzer's Introductory Intermediate Algebra for college students. This is talking about using my slope and my intercept form of the equation to graph an equation of a line. So we're going to graph the line. We've talked about slope. That's how steep it is. We've talked about where it intersects the y-axis or the x-axis, that kind of thing. So now we're going to kind of put it together. So the slope-intercept form of the equation kind of is what it sounds like. It means that you can easily see the slope from the equation. So if I look at this equation, I know the slope is 4 because it's already solved for y. And so I know the slope is the number right in front of x. Similarly here, I know the slope is 3/5 because it's the coefficient right in front of the x. So when I have an equation written y is equal to something x, right, plus maybe a constant, I already know where the slope is, what the slope is. Also, I actually happen to know where it intersects the y-axis. Now remember, when a line intersects the y-axis, okay, at a point, let's say it intersects right here, this point has no x value, a 0 x value. Because to get here, I went 0 left and right, but I did go up. If it intersects, say a line intersected right here, at this point, I went no units left or right, but I did go down. So what's interesting is if I put a 0 in for x, if I put a 0 right here and substitute 0, anything times 0 is still 0. That whole term goes away. And y is this last constant. So when x is 0, y is this. Same thing as what we said before. When x is 0 and you have a value for y, it sits on the y-axis. Okay, so if the equation's in this format already, it's kind of nice. I already know what the slope is. I know where it's going to intersect the y-axis. And so I'm really in good shape with graphing this line. But sometimes it's in the standard form where it has an x and a y and a constant, and so it's not solved for y like this one. And if the equation's not in the right format, you're going to have to do a little algebra to rearrange it so that y is isolated and you'll know your slope and y-intercept. But don't worry, you can do it. All right? So graphing lines using this form, once you get this form, you can graph it pretty easily. Here are your steps. First, rearrange it so that it's in this format if it's not already there. Like these two are already in the right format, so I don't have to do step 1. I don't have to rearrange it because it's already solved for y. But these two equations are not solved for y, so I have to do some algebra to rearrange it so that y is isolated and it's in the right format. Step 2, plot the point of the y-intercept. You know it crosses the y-axis at this point, so go ahead and plot that point. It's part of the line. Third, use your rise over run to plot another point. You can go up or down, then left or right. How do you know? Because you have a slope right there. And then lastly, now that you have 2 points, you have your intercept and you have that other point, you can use a straight edge to draw a line through the point and put arrows at the end. So let's practice it. So here it asks for specific colors, red or blue, so it may be helpful to have some colored pencils or pens or whatever. I typically try to use erasable things in math versus pens or ink or whatever, just because it gets kind of messy if I make a mistake. All right, so here, this is isolated for y, so my slope is the number right in front of x, so it's 4. I could also write the slope, since it's rise over run, I like to write slopes as fractions just because it keeps me straight about how much I'm going up and down and how much I'm going left and right. So I can rewrite it, but either answer is fine. It's just that this second one might be more helpful. The y-intercept. Well, if it's in this form, we said that that other number is where it's going to intersect the y-axis. The -3 is where it's going to intersect the y-axis. Well, since it's going to intersect the y-axis at -3, x must be 0. because if x was anything else and y is -3, then it's a point over here or over here. It's not on the y-axis. So the 0 has to be the value for the x. So let's plot it. So it asks us to plot, so we rearranged the equation. We didn't have to do that. Plot the y-intercept. The y-intercept is 0, -3. Here it is, 0, -3. My slope is rise over run. So I'm going to rise up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to run 1. I could do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to run 1. I only have to do it once, but you can do it more than once if you want to. If you'll notice, you're starting to form a line. This line, y is equal to 4x minus 3, can be graphed in red by plotting the y-intercept, that was my first point, and then using my slope, rise over run, using my slope to plot another point. I only need 2 points to draw a line. Okay, let's do the second one. It's a little different because it's not in the right format. I can't just look at this and say, hey, the slope is something. I don't know what it is. But I can rearrange the equation so that I can solve for y, so I can get it back in this format. So 3y is equal to 2x plus 6. Remember, 2x over 3 is the same thing as 2/3 x, because 2 and x are still in the numerator and 3 is still in the denominator. Then 6 divided by 3 is 2. All right, so now I have it in the right format. Okay, so this format tells me what is my slope? 2/3. Which is kind of nice to have a fraction because I'm going to be using rise over run. My y-intercept is 2. What does that mean? It's going to intersect the y-axis at 2, but this 2 is not a point. 2 is a number. So this point is 0, 2. Okay, that's how you write a point. All right, so using my steps, I rearrange the equation. I plot the y-intercept, 0, 2, and then I use my rise over my run, or my slope, to plot one other point. Maybe I want to go up and then over, or down and then right. It doesn't really matter. So if I go up 2, that's my rise, and then my run is 3. 3 is positive, so I'm going to go in the positive direction. Positive and positive. All right. Now, what if I was at the very edge of the graph at my first intercept? Maybe it was way up here, and I didn't want to go off the graph. So if that were the case, positive 2/3 is the same thing as -2 over -3, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. This is equal to positive 2/3. So I could go 2 down and 3 left, because down and left, down is negative and left is negative. And look, it still falls on the same line as going up, which is positive, and right, which is positive. So positive over positive is the same as negative over negative. Sometimes that comes in handy if you're at the very top or the very bottom of a graph and you're trying to plot another point and you're going off the graph. You have room over here. So what we do first, we plotted our y-intercept right here, 0, 2. And then rise over run, we did our slope, or you could do the same slope but in a different format. It asks us to graph it in blue. So always use a straight edge. And there is my line. Okay. Here is the answer to the other side. Okay, stay tuned for section 3.5. It's the last section of this chapter that we're doing, and it'll be over point slope formula.